to see him one time. That was that Monday right before the plea deal. That Monday
Right
night.
before the plea deal, and that was it.
These are the parents of Chris Watts, the man who pled guilty to killing his pregnant wife, Shanann, and 2 kids, Bella and Celeste.
How did he kill her? How did he say he did it when he snapped?
He said he did the same thing that she did to him, that she did to the girls.
His parents went into details about the relationship problems Shanann and Chris allegedly had, but more importantly, spoke about the frustrations with his whole plea.
Are you guys frustrated with his attorneys here? Are you guys frustrated with the direction they may have put him through?
Yes, I am. I am absolutely frustrated.
We contacted his public defender, but they declined to comment.
Do you think he was coerced at all?
I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea what the public, to me, that all they wanted to do was just save his life. Just save his life. Well, save his life and life in prison, to me, there's no difference. You know, he's going to die in prison, and there's no telling what will be done to him in prison. And I just want him to fight. I want him to not take this plea deal. I want him to plead not guilty to the children.
After this interview, the Watts are looking into different legal avenues, even looking at another attorney in Denver to take their son's case. But there's been some reaction about all this from Shanann's family.
Are you guys worried about some of the backlash about maybe coming out and speaking on behalf of Chris and what it might do to your guys' relationship, and, you know, speaking out like this about a woman who can't defend herself right now?
Well, Shanann, I mean, you have to get to know her to be around her. Put it that way.
Her family's attorney sent us this statement. Their false statements, however hurtful and inaccurate, will never alter the truth about Shanann and will never alter the truth about the crimes committed by their son. Her memory and reputation deserves to be protected, and her family is fully prepared to do so.
I just want to make sure he's doing the right thing.
Yes.
I mean, if he didn't kill the children, I want him to say so. Then let them prove it.
I spoke to a longtime friend of both Shanann and Chris who saw the interview. Out of respect of the families, he didn't want to do an on-camera interview, but said both families are hurting and just hope for the family's sake that Chris doesn't continue to fight this and go to trial.
I didn't want them just to save his life or to life in prison. I wanted them to have a defense. You know, there was a defense there.
Welcome to Dark Matters, True Crime, the channel where every case drags
One of
you
the
deeper
most
into the
disturbing
unknown.
patterns in the Watts case
Hit that
isn't
subscribe
something
button
Chris
and
Watts
join
did
us
in a
as
single
we explore
moment.
the darkest
It's something
corners
he
of the
failed
criminal
to do over years. He never defended Shanann Watts to his family. Not publicly, not privately, and not even when tensions were obvious and escalating. From early in their marriage, Shanann's relationship with Chris's parents was strained. Disagreements over parenting, boundaries, and control became recurring points of conflict. Yet Chris consistently chose silence. Instead of acting as a bridge between his wife and his family, he withdrew, allowing resentment on both sides to grow unchecked. Psychologists often describe Chris as deeply conflict avoidant. He did not confront. He did not correct. He absorbed tension quietly and redirected it inward. When his parents criticized Shanann, Chris rarely intervened. When Shanann felt unsupported, he offered reassurance without action. This pattern created emotional isolation. Shanann felt alone, while Chris avoided accountability. What makes this silence significant is not just marital strain, but identity. Chris struggled to assert himself as a husband, independent of his family of origin. Defending Shanann would have required choosing a side. And Chris avoided sides at all costs. Silence felt safer than confrontation. Over time, this non-response became a message of its own. To his family, it implied agreement or indifference. To Shanann, it felt like betrayal. And to Chris, it became another pressure he refused to face directly. This chapter matters because silence is not neutral. In emotionally charged environments, silence often reinforces the strongest voice in the room and weakens the most vulnerable one. Chris Watts didn't just fail to defend Shanann in a single argument. he made silence his default. And that silence laid the groundwork for deeper emotional collapse. If you want responsible true crime analysis that examines behavior, psychology, and overlooked patterns like the video, and subscribe to Dark Matters True Crime. Chris Watts often described himself as a people pleaser, but that label hides a more damaging truth. He did not simply want peace, he wanted approval. And when approval is the goal, leadership disappears. In conflicts between Shanann and his family, Chris chose loyalty without responsibility. He listened to complaints from both sides, offered sympathy to both, but defended neither. To his parents, he remained the obedient son who never challenged their opinions. To Shanann, he presented himself as supportive in private while avoiding action in public. This created a dangerous imbalance. Shanann was expected to absorb criticism without backup, while Chris avoided the discomfort of setting boundaries. Psychologists note that in marriages, failure to establish a united front can erode trust faster than overt conflict. Shanann wasn't asking Chris to choose his family over his parents. She was asking him to stand beside her. But standing beside someone requires confrontation. It requires disappointing others. And Chris avoided disappointment the same way he avoided conflict, by doing nothing. Over time, this pattern reinforced a narrative within his family that Shanann was the problem. Chris's silence validated their perspective. Without correction, assumptions hardened into beliefs. Shanann was framed as controlling, dramatic, or difficult, while Chris remained the quiet, agreeable presence. What Chris failed to understand is that neutrality in emotional conflict is not neutral at all. It shifts power. This pattern of passive loyalty without leadership left Shanann isolated long before the tragedy. Marriage often comes with an unspoken promise: protection. Not from the world, but from unfair judgment, misplaced blame, and emotional isolation. In the Watts household, that shield was missing. As tensions between Shanann and Chris's family deepened, Shanann increasingly felt like she was fighting alone. Family gatherings became emotionally charged, boundaries were crossed, hurtful assumptions went unchallenged, and through it all, Chris remained largely silent. Psychologically, this silence functioned as abandonment, not physical, but emotional. Shanann was expected to manage conflict while Chris stayed on the sidelines, quietly hoping the tension would resolve itself. But conflict doesn't disappear when ignored. It hardens. Experts often note that conflict avoidance can masquerade as kindness. Chris likely believed he was keeping peace by staying quiet. In reality, he was allowing resentment to grow unchecked. Shanann interpreted his inaction as indifference. His family interpreted it as agreement, and Chris himself became increasingly detached from the emotional labor of his own marriage. This dynamic slowly reshaped how Chris viewed his role. Instead of seeing himself as Shanann's partner and advocate, he saw himself as a passive observer, someone to whom problems happened, rather than someone responsible for addressing them. Over time, this emotional distance created a narrative in Chris's mind that Shanann was the source of conflict, not the environment he refused to manage. This internal story allowed him to emotionally disengage while avoiding guilt. What makes this chapter crucial is recognizing how neglect can be as damaging as hostility. Shanann wasn't undermined by direct attacks alone. She was undermined by the absence of defense. Chris Watts didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't intervene. And in doing nothing, he allowed division to deepen until connection began to disappear. Defending Shanann would have required Chris Watts to do something he spent his entire life avoiding: discomfort.
And see things like him getting into fights? Or...
No fighting. He was quiet, and he got along with people, and he didn't start anything, and he was a perfect teenager, tell you the truth. He did not even rebel. He wanted to go to NASCAR Tech. We made that possible for him.
What did he do after he finished school?
He worked at the dealership as a service technician and was making good money and loved it. He bought a toolbox, and he started buying his tools. And
it would have meant correcting his parents, setting boundaries, and risking their disappointment.
Well.
Instead, Chris consistently chose what felt easiest in the moment, even when it damaged his marriage in the long term. Psychologists often describe this behavior as emotional avoidance reinforced by reward. Every time Chris stayed silent, immediate tension disappeared. No argument, no confrontation, no backlash. But what he gained in short-term relief, he lost in long-term trust. Shanann, on the other hand, experienced the opposite. Each instance of silence deepened her sense of isolation. She was expected to maintain relationships, absorb criticism, and protect her children, all without support from the person who vowed to stand beside her. Over time, this imbalance reshaped the emotional hierarchy of the marriage. Chris stopped seeing himself as a partner and began functioning more like a bystander. Problems belonged to Shanann. He simply endured them. This dynamic became especially damaging during moments of heightened stress, pregnancy, financial strain, and family conflict. Instead of stepping up, Chris emotionally stepped back. He internalized resentment while outwardly maintaining calm. What makes this chapter disturbing is not cruelty, but absence. Chris did not actively harm Shanann in these moments. He failed to protect her, and that failure communicated something powerful. Her emotional safety was negotiable. In healthy marriages, loyalty is visible. It shows up in small acts of defense and boundary setting. Chris's refusal to engage sent the opposite message, one that slowly eroded empathy and connection. Silence kept Chris comfortable, but comfort came at a cost Shanann paid alone. For deeper true crime analysis that examines behavior and psychology with care, like the video and subscribe to Dark Matters True Crime. When conflict is never addressed, it doesn't disappear. It transforms. In Chris Watts's case, unresolved tension turned into silent resentment. Each family disagreement, each moment of silence, each failure to defend Shanann added another layer to an emotional buildup he never confronted. Rather than expressing frustration or setting boundaries, Chris stored his emotions away. Outwardly, he remained calm and compliant. Inwardly, he began constructing a narrative where he was the victim of constant pressure, caught between a demanding wife and a critical family. This narrative was never spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. It justified his emotional withdrawal and allowed him to avoid responsibility. By framing himself as trapped, Chris avoided acknowledging the role his inaction played in creating that trap.
When and where did he meet Shanann?
They met, and he liked her, she liked him, but it didn't, I don't think that was love at first sight or anything. They took a little while and I guess got to know each other and, dated. It was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. He looks like a skater boy. Look at his hair. Look how much stuff he puts on his hair. It was just on and on and on, and I just got a bad feeling.
And they got married in 2012. Did they get married in North Carolina?
They did. Mm-hmm.
How was that?
We didn't attend.
Really?
Mm-mm. We didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along, and I didn't like the way she treated him.
What do you know about their marriage and their issues?
Oh, very little. Very little. You can only observe. I could only observe what I saw when I was around them. Christopher always seemed anxious, and he when she needed something, I mean, he would run. He wouldn't walk, he would run, he would get it. He just always seemed to be right
that
there
this type of internal
at her
resentment
beck and
is
call.
particularly dangerous because it lacks release. Without healthy confrontation, emotions become distorted. Small grievances feel enormous. Neutral interactions feel hostile. Empathy fades. Shanann, meanwhile, continued to push for unity and support. She communicated her needs clearly, often expressing how abandoned she felt during family conflicts. But without visible action from Chris, her words only widened the emotional gap. This chapter matters because it shows how neglect can quietly corrode relationships. Chris didn't explode in anger. He shut down. And shutdowns don't resolve problems. They suspend them until pressure becomes unbearable. By the time Chris began emotionally detaching from Shanann entirely, the groundwork had already been laid. He had spent years avoiding accountability, avoiding defense, and avoiding confrontation. Resentment filled the space those actions left behind. In true crime, we often ask how someone reaches a breaking point. This is part of the answer. Silence, repeated, becomes poison. By the time the Watts marriage reached its final months, Chris's silence had evolved into something more damaging, emotional withdrawal. To the outside world, he still appeared calm, cooperative, and agreeable. But internally, he had already checked out. Chris often described himself as someone who didn't want drama. In reality, he had replaced engagement with detachment. Instead of addressing conflict, he minimized it. Instead of defending Shanann, he avoided conversations altogether. This withdrawal.
So you're just with me this morning. I just hop out of the shower and I'm getting ready. My mother-in-law's here today, so she flew in to spend 2 weeks with the girls, and her and my father-in-law are going to babysit the kids while we are in Punta Cana. So I'm really excited. We're gonna go to the store and wander around a little bit today. So you're here with me getting ready because it's a busy day for me. Have to finalize our taxes today, so that's gonna be get that out of the way before we leave. So good morning, Christina. Sorry, I'm getting ready. Hey, Mandy. You gotta exfoliate. Best exfoliator for your lips ever. So I wanted to come on here to get ready.
All allowed him to
talk to you
function
guys,
without
because
confronting guilt or
a lot has
responsibility.
happened this past year.
Psychologists describe this behavior as emotional numbing. It is a coping mechanism where a person shuts down feelings to avoid stress. While it may feel peaceful to the person withdrawing, it leaves those around them emotionally stranded. Shanann felt this shift deeply. She sensed distance, confusion, and a growing lack of support. Her attempts to reconnect were met with reassurance but no action. Chris told her what she wanted to hear, while continuing to do nothing to change the underlying dynamics. This emotional absence extended beyond his marriage. By refusing to engage with family conflict, Chris avoided defining who he was loyal to. He existed in a neutral space that protected him from confrontation but destroyed trust. What makes this chapter critical is understanding how emotional withdrawal paved the way for moral disengagement. When empathy fades, responsibility weakens. When responsibility weakens, reality becomes easier to escape. Chris Watts didn't stop defending Shanann because he hated her. He stopped because defending her required emotional presence. And emotional presence required courage he no longer had. Silence gave him peace. Withdrawal gave him distance. And distance allowed him to avoid seeing the damage he was causing. For thoughtful true crime analysis that examines behavior patterns and psychology, like the video, and subscribe to Dark Matters True Crime. At some point, Chris Watts's silence stopped being a habit and became a decision. Defending Shanann was no longer something he forgot to do. It was something he actively avoided.
And did that seem odd to you? Or?
Very odd. It was very odd. He just seemed nervous.
So how much did you see them over these last 6 years?
Probably twice a year. We would go up there.
Did you stay with them, or?
Yeah, we would stay with them and stay a week and then come back home.
Tell me about Bella and Celeste.
Oh, Bella was just like Chris. Just like him, shy, cautious, conservative. Cece was a ball of fire. I mean, she was fearless, completely fearless. She just loved to run.
By choosing silence
they
repeatedly,
were wonderful.
he chose the path of least resistance,
breaks my heart
even as the consequences
they're
grew
not
heavier.
here.
By this stage, Chris had emotionally rewritten his role in the marriage. He no longer saw himself as a partner responsible for protecting his wife from unfair treatment. Instead, he saw himself as someone enduring circumstances imposed on him. This shift allowed him to justify his detachment while maintaining an outward image of calm. Psychologists refer to this as moral disengagement, the process by which individuals distance themselves from the ethical implications of their actions, or in this case, inaction. By convincing himself that speaking up would only make things worse, Chris rationalized doing nothing at all. Shanann, meanwhile, continued to seek reassurance and unity. She believed that communication could fix what silence had broken, but communication without action is hollow. Each unspoken defense reinforced the message that she was on her own. What makes this chapter so unsettling is how ordinary it looks. There were no explosive arguments, no dramatic confrontations, just quiet choices made over time, choices that steadily dismantled emotional connection. Chris's failure to defend Shanann wasn't driven by hatred. It was driven by avoidance, fear of conflict, and an unwillingness to confront discomfort. But intention does not erase impact. By choosing silence again and again, Chris isolated himself emotionally and morally.
Go, Cece. Go, Bella. Go, girls. Blow on it. She wants you to blow on it. Shake your booty, Cece. Go, Cece. What?
Drop it like it's hot.
Go, Cece. How many babies do I have in my belly?
5.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's a lot of babies. You better grow up really quickly. Because I need help.
It's already tough. It's already tough.
You didn't kiss the baby?
And once isolation sets in,
You kiss the baby in the morning and at night?
Silence
bed?
didn't just shape the marriage. It shaped the mindset that followed. In the end, the question isn't just why Chris Watts never defended Shanann to his family. It's what that silence ultimately cost. Silence didn't keep the peace. It didn't protect anyone. It quietly dismantled trust, accountability, and emotional connection until nothing solid remained.
Oh, don't look at Daddy. He's opening his birthday present. He's getting a month to thrive.
Heck yeah. Oh, you got to be kidding me. I gotta censor this, Bella. You serious?
Ice, ice. The kids are thrilled with your birthday present.
Oh, yeah, definitely wearing this. Are you serious?
Serious.
Hell yeah! Oh my goodness!
Cece got her ice.
Oh my goodness.
By refusing to take a stand, Chris allowed resentment to replace responsibility. He avoided difficult conversations, but those conversations didn't disappear. They transformed into internal narratives that painted him as trapped, misunderstood, and emotionally cornered. This mindset did not excuse what came later, but it explains how emotional detachment took root. Shanann needed a partner who would advocate for her, set boundaries, and stand firm when lines were crossed. Instead, she was left navigating family tension alone, questioning her worth and feeling unsupported in her own marriage. That isolation was not accidental. It was the result of repeated inaction. What makes this pattern so important is that it's easy to overlook. Silence rarely looks dangerous in the moment. It looks calm, reasonable, non-confrontational. But over time, silence becomes a message, one that says protection is optional and loyalty is conditional. Chris Watts did not become violent because he stayed silent, but silence allowed emotional disengagement to grow unchecked. It weakened empathy, it blurred responsibility, and it made escape, rather than honesty, feel like the only option. The tragedy of this case is not only what happened, but what was allowed to happen emotionally long before. The warning signs weren't loud. They were quiet. And that is the lesson this chapter leaves behind. When someone refuses to speak up for those closest to them, the damage may already be underway. If you believe true crime should examine behavior, psychology, and warning signs with honesty and care, like this video and subscribe to Dark Matters True Crime.